Consumer expectations have never been higher. But with the evolving economic and competitive pressures, it's getting harder for brands to deliver the kind of consistent, compelling experiences that keep customers loyal. Can operations and facilities leaders find ways to meet these demands while growing their footprint and ultimately drive revenue? Let's find out. Welcome to Elevating Brick and Mortar, a show that discusses the crucial role that facilities, construction, and operations play in designing and delivering a compelling customer experience. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Elevating Brick and Mortar. Thank you for joining us. I'm here today with Eric Taylor, founder and CEO of Salon Republic. Eric, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sid. Your voice is rather intimidating. You have a very good announcer voice. And as a fellow podcast host, I'm wondering if I should take some lessons somewhere.
Oh boy. Well, thank you. You're too kind. I appreciate it. Well, let's jump into it, right, Eric? For folks in our audience who might not be familiar with your brand, can you share some insight into Salon Republic, please?
Sure. So Salon Republic is a 25-year-old company that I founded and run today as its CEO. We operate 40 locations now. We've got about 3,500 beauty professionals across 5 states. And the essence of our business is to take a space of around 16,000 square feet. So we go up to about 30,000 square feet for a max, and we have locations as small as about 7,000 square feet. So we average about 16,000 square feet. And we build kind of artistic studios within these footprints that we then lease to independent beauty professionals to run their own businesses. And then we layer in certain amenities that are specific to beauty professionals, such as on-site beauty supplies. So we carry about 100 brands of hair product that the beauty professionals use on their clients as they're doing color services or cutting services or what have you, straightening services, various things like that. They can buy right there on site, which is a very unique thing that we offer. I don't know of anybody else who does that. We do marketing services, we do towels for them and other things specific to our customers, the beauty professionals' needs.
So is it full service, meaning you also have the POS and the technology needs, like everything's covered in your space and they just bring their talent?
Not quite that full service because they don't want us to check out their clients.
Oh,
so so let's identify one of our, we call them members. So one of our hairstylist members, Jane Doe, let's say, has a studio at Salon Republic in one of our locations, let's say the Beverly Hills location. Jane Doe has 100 to 200 clients who have been going to Jane for many, many years. So Jane takes a studio at Salon Republic and she can build the studio out however she wants it. She can paint the walls, a lovely mauve color, and she can bring in furniture that reflects her personality and her brand. And she has access to her studio 24 hours a day. She could do whatever services she wants. She can charge whatever prices she wants. She can use whatever products she wants. She can play whatever music she wants. She can create the environment that she wants for her clients there in Beverly Hills. As part of that independence that we offer, she can choose any of the probably 200 technology platforms that are available for beauty professionals that take care of things like booking, point of sale, certain customer communication, and things like that. We've decided to specifically stay out of that business because it's become a highly commoditized thing.
So your focus primarily is to create the space and create the environment in which a member or a beauty professional can come, make it their own, and kind of run a business, right?
We occupy a place along the evolution of a hairstylist between a hairstylist having a station in a traditional open salon that they rent and a hairstylist getting their own storefront on Main Street and
Okay.
signing a 5-year lease and,
Yeah.
spending $800,000 to build out the space and then fighting with the landlord, for 5 or 10 years. We allow them the same independence with greater flexibility and less investment than that storefront option.
Love it. So, Eric, what inspired you to start Salon Republic, and how did you come up with this model?
So I went to Pepperdine. I studied finance. If any listeners know Pepperdine, it's located. It's not on the beach, but it's pretty darn close to the beach. Certainly looks at the beach from just about everywhere on campus. It's in Malibu, California. And so I spent 5 years there, and I knew that upon graduation, the quality of my lifestyle was going to plummet. And so I really was worried about that. So about junior year, I started thinking about businesses that I could start upon graduation that would allow me to, hopefully make enough money to get back to the beach someday. And so I looked at unconsolidated businesses. I looked at dry cleaners. I looked at car washes. I looked at salons and various things that maybe I don't remember anymore. And so upon graduation, I moved back in with my parents in Dallas, Texas, and my girlfriend at the time, her hairstylist, had moved to a studio-based salon, very similar to what Salon Republic is today. And so she visited her hairstylist, and she called me from the landline because we didn't have very good cell phones back then. And she said, "You got to check this out. I just got my haircut. It's the coolest salon. My hairstylist has her own space, and she's just crushing it in there." And it was 5 minutes from my parents' house. So I jumped in the car, drove down there. I met the founder of the concept, of the studio suite concept. Some people call it salon suites. I like to call it salon studios. It's the same thing.
Sure.
And so I worked with the founder of the concept for about a year for free. He was my mentor, and I learned everything about the salon business. I learned what makes hairstylists happy. I learned what makes clients happy, and how the economic wheels of the industry turn. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I really want to do this. It also checked another box for me personally. My mom is an artist. She's been a very successful oil painter for many years. Her studio was in our house growing up.
Gotcha.
And my dad was in the real estate business, and a very, very boring business. He owned warehouses, and it was a dirty business. It was horrible. But I had to go over there and sweep out warehouses, and I had to do that stuff regardless. So I kind of wanted to combine the interesting nature of art with the simply the pragmatic need of something like real estate and the recurring income of real estate. And so this idea of a salon studio operation checked those boxes very, very well. And so I got into the business. I moved back out to LA and opened up my first salon in December of 2000.
Wow, that's fascinating. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Does the business today look like what you conceptualized 25 years ago, or did it go through some sort of changes during that time based on the evolving needs of the customer today?
The foundations are the same.
Okay.
The essence of me taking space with certain characteristics, improving the space in such a way that this industry, the beauty industry, is attracted to it, and then maintaining the facility, all of that remains the same. There are, of course, there's nuances, lots of very important nuances to the ways that taking care of the space, designing the space, choosing the space has changed. We've added a lot of amenities on top of just the foundation that I just described. So that's changed a whole lot. And it was 15 years until I figured out how to create a beauty supply offering within the facility, for example. It was many, many years until I figured out how to offer complimentary towel service, for example. Nobody else does that in my industry, and various other things. But the foundations are surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, the same.
I love it. Perfect. So what's your brand promise and your North Star when you look at, both what you offer to the beauty professional, but also the end consumer who is their customer?
Our brand promise is to provide the beauty professional for the ideal working environment and whatever that means to them. And so the challenge to us is to take our 3,500 beauty professionals, 3,500 individuals with different styles, different needs, different types of customers, different services, different schedules, different personalities, and to build a platform that allows each of them to create their ideal working environment. So it's a very interesting blend of us creating certain specific, unchangeable natures to the space and allowing flexibility for what our beauty professionals are, what our members want to do. And this is a constant tug of war and constant trade-off
Sure.
that we have to balance on a daily basis. We're constantly opening new locations, constantly, obviously managing our existing fleet of stores out there. So we have to make decisions that account for that balancing act.
That's great. And I'm sure the business has evolved, as time has progressed and as your members are giving you more feedback. But I'm sure there are some members that you hear more from. And can you share some success stories of beauty professionals who've been with you for some time and have thrived in building their own brand? I presume like they eventually build their own brand around their art, right? And they use your space to go and deliver on their own promise to their customers, right?
It's pretty evenly split between those who have created their own brand and they're bringing it into a Salon Republic facility physically. And then within our facility, they're allowed to evolve the brand maybe more deeply than they were able to before. And this is the type of hairstylist, which is probably the most typical, where they essentially, when they work in a traditional salon, they're essentially trying to fit their brand, their personality themselves, their identity into somebody else's world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but what the landscape, before us was a successful hairstylist, maybe who was able to save a lot of money, goes out there, opens a storefront and creates what they think is, their ideal working environment. And, that might be a certain kind of floor, certain kind of paint color, certain kind of music, certain temperature, certain opening hours and closing hours, etc. And then they go out there and they try to attract other beauty professionals to work with them. And so these other beauty professionals are quite literally trying to fit into this other person's world. And the very disparate nature of this creative, artistic profile of person means that not that many want to fit into somebody else's world.
Yeah.
They want to create their own world. But then you have that difficulty and expense and commitment of going out and getting a storefront, which is very difficult and probably not a good idea, for a lot of beauty professionals who are very, very good at being beauty professionals, servicing their clients, not so good at finding landlords or finding contractors or, spending 30 hours a week managing vendors to fix problems, in the facility. We do all that kind of stuff that's maybe not so fun. I mean, listeners to this podcast, this is the profession in which all of you have chosen. So hopefully you do enjoy it. but people on the outside, trust me, they don't want to maintain facilities. It's not fun when there's a leak or there's the front door breaks or something like that. It becomes a nuisance to do that. So we essentially take care of all that and allow the beauty professionals both the independence of having their own place, while at the same time taking care of the not so fun parts.
Yeah, what's interesting is like this entire show is based on, the premise that many times the businesses don't appreciate the impact the built environment has on the product or their business or their brand promise to their customer. And what we're trying to do, as the name of the show explains, is to elevate the conversation, elevating the brick and mortar and the dialogue around it, to tie it to what brands really care about, which is how they engage with their customers. Everything that deals with the built environment is tough, and it's tough to maintain those spaces, design those spaces, and create those spaces which are warm and welcoming and look and feel like they're day one on a constant basis if you don't have the right tools, the right technology, the right investments. What I love about our conversation and the fact that you're a guest on the show is that the built environment is your product. That is 100%. The product that you are, that makes who you are as a brand and what you're, offering to your customers, your members. So that is just perfect.
That's right. It is our business.
Yeah.
We take it extremely seriously. If a beauty professional walks into a salon that is a Salon Republic, and they've been in a number of other salons as well as a Salon Republic, they will likely be able to tell you, oh, this is a Salon Republic. That it's modern yet comfortable. It's high end. It's a place where they feel comfortable. It's a place where their clients enter and they think, okay, this is a really nice place. I enjoy coming here. I feel like this is a luxury experience. I'm willing to pay my hairstylist more money because I could see that they've elevated their business from maybe where they were before. And then, of course, we provide that white box of the studio to the member for them to really refine and hone down into the very, specific finish details to reflect their specific brand.
Now, you had mentioned that you were actually going through, a process of updating your design and your layout right now. How do you approach that in the first place? And what made you now look to, tweak what you're offering? What's making you go through this iterative process of refining your design and the layouts of your locations?
I would say that the main catalyst for this, well, first of all, over 25 years, we've gone through this process several times where we've had to recreate the prototype of our stores. Early on, there was no prototype. It was, what can I afford? And what do I think is going to work, based on what I learned from my mentor. So, but fast forwarding through the evolution of Salon Republic, we've probably had 5 major, design changes, and some have been more significant than others. This most recent design change is a result of increasing costs in certain categories, as well as feedback from our beauty professionals on what looks good, what feels good. And I say that with a little asterisk, which I'll identify as from a maintenance standpoint.
Sure.
Okay, so what looks good on day 1 isn't necessarily what looks good in year 3.
Yeah, that's
right?
the bane of every professional in this industry, right?
That's right. And the interior designer, if left to her own fruition, the interior designer would, of course, spend way too much money, build something that took way too long, would be way too complicated, require too many people, and looked absolutely tremendous on day 1. It would win awards on day 1. And nobody would want to be in the space in year 3 because it would look so bad. And likely the company would have gone out of business by then because it was so expensive to maintain that environment that it didn't make any sense to run the business. So it's incumbent upon the owner or the manager or whoever's making those ultimate decisions on finishes and things like that to balance the trade-offs between aesthetics and everything incumbent upon the aesthetics. What are you trying to signal to your customers? What kind of environment are you trying to create? What kind of customers are you trying to attract? Things like that. With the practicality of the upfront costs, the upfront capital costs, with the reality of the ongoing maintenance costs. And the ongoing maintenance costs for a business like ours, we have to look at it in a 20-year plus lens because we sign 15 to 20-year leases.
Oh, wow.
with extensions. So we've been in business 25 years. Our first location that I signed 25 years ago in Studio City, California, we still operate it. We still have members that I met, and they chose to work in the salon with me before we even opened the salon. They're still in there servicing their clients.
25 years they've been with you.
25 years. We probably have, let's see, there's probably 50 people who work in that salon. Of the 50 people working in the salon, 10 of them have been there for 25 years.
That's fascinating.
So we have to look at things from that kind of perspective. How are we designing this place? How are we building this place? What kind of finishes are we choosing? And what is it going to mean to our ROI? What are we spending? What are we going to get? And then what is it going to mean to the P&L, right? What is our repairs and maintenance line going to cost because of these things? So you have to look at it from all these perspectives. And because costs change, the prototype has to change. And because trends change, the prototype has to change, just aesthetic trends. And so I'll bring up one example to kind of, because this is something we're dealing with right now. So 25 years ago, I remember talking to our architect or designer or whoever I was talking to, and I said, okay, what kind of floor? So threw out a couple of floors that are options, and I'm like, I really like the look of sealed concrete. As long as we get this kind of finish and as long as we can make it durable. And so we put in sealed concrete in the reception area of the salon. But it wasn't the right kind of sealed concrete because at the time, to do the right kind of sealed concrete was probably double the cost of carpet.
Okay.
So we did carpet in a lot of the common areas of the salon, but we did kind of the wrong kind of sealed concrete, cheaper version of sealed concrete in the reception area. Okay. Let's just fast forward to where we are now. Now, the cost of carpet, the cost of tile, and whether it's LVT or porcelain ceramic types of tile is more than a much more durable variety of sealed concrete. So now costs have changed. And over the years, as we've run these facilities, as we've suffered some of the elements of maintaining these facilities, whether it's clients dripping hair color on the ground, or floods happening now and then, or the maintenance staff dragging trash bags down the hall that are dripping and staining the carpet or whatever on the way, we're back to sealed concrete. Right? With the much more durable nature of the products that are now on the market, and the increasing labor costs of installing those other flooring alternatives, we're now back to sealed concrete as a good solution for the floor. So this probably, that the inflection point where those costs changed was probably 3-4 years ago, because labor costs have absolutely skyrocketed. To lay tile now in Southern California is $22, $25 a foot to lay tile and grout it and all that kind of stuff. That's crazy. I mean, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, it was 12.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. We talk about this all the time. There's a massive shortage of skilled labor, and we're seeing that across all types of trades. It's becoming more expensive to hire and keep talent, and then those costs, ultimately get passed on to the customer, and so prices are skyrocketing. And so a lot of our customers and a lot of folks in the industry are now exploring hybrid, models where they have folks on staff, and sometimes it's cheaper to have people on call and working within the facility, depending, of course, on your facility. Businesses are exploring different models, but you're 100% right. The price of materials has gone up. The price of labor has gone up, and so it's an interesting time, for the physical built environment in terms of what it takes to actually build and then maintain these spaces. Now, you've also talked about the fact that salons are a harsh environment for materials. Right? We're talking about hair and water and chemicals. That can be a lot. So I'm sure when you're looking at the different types of materials and also how you upkeep your spaces, these decisions can have a significant impact on how easy it is to wrap up the day, and keep your locations feeling welcoming, but also clean, right? What are your thoughts on that in terms of today? You're CEO of the company. You've got 40 locations. Are you still in touch with the day-to-day facilities management of the business? How do you ensure that the vision that you started out with continues to be part of like the culture within your company in terms of how those spaces are maintained?
Yeah. So I am in touch on a day-to-day basis with the management of our facilities. Just yesterday, I sat in on a meeting with about 11 of our team members, 3 of which were in our facilities team, and we were talking about the best ways to communicate between the ground level salon managers and the service team to take care of problems, because that communication sounds easy. It's not easy. The communication needs to be systematic, and it needs to happen in a good, efficient, yet detailed way. And, it needs to be sent properly. It needs to be received properly. And then so the service team can execute a solution to whatever, started the problem, started the communication in the first place. We are dealing with a flood right now in one of our salons. It was probably the worst flood in our 25 years.
Wow. Sorry to hear that.
And it was not our fault. It was nobody's fault. A bit of material in a relatively new salon, the salon's only probably 3 years old, failed and flooded the entire facility, 16,000 square feet. So how do we make sure that we maintain a facility that is appealing and satisfies that promise to our customers, our members? It really boils down to creating systems within the company, creating this facilities team that I'm referencing right now, and then making sure that the processes and procedures that the facilities team is using are fixing things really quickly, really effectively, and within a reasonable budget. That's basically it. Yeah. Now, to respond to something that you had mentioned, people trying out different models of running facilities. We, for a vast majority of our history, we've used outside vendors for things. Whether it's changing HVAC filters, routine preventative maintenance, to the specific stuff, mitigating floods and things like that. We now have, I believe, 2 full-time handyman type team members in our facilities group in 2 different regions. and they take care of a lot of the preventative maintenance routine stuff, as well as, some of the lighter ad hoc needs of the facilities. Let's say if there's a plumbing issue or something like that. So they, and then we have outside vendors who supplement those two guys, and that seems to be working pretty well right now. But one of the important things that is a component of trying this model out is to have a good manager leading the facilities team.
That's right.
To build a team, you need a really great leader. You need a really great manager. And so 100%. It took us years to really essentially be able to afford such a person, okay? Because they're not cheap. And so we have a really great leader to the facilities group. He also actually leads our construction, our superintendents, our project managers, who are all in-house. And he has done a phenomenal job finding, great handy guys, as well as managing them.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, there's massive talent in the space in terms of folks that understand the business. But when you find the right person and they understand the business beyond just the function that they serve, you want to hold on to them, right? Because that is something that, especially in your business, is super important because the product is the physical space, itself, right? Eric, you've done this for a while now. You probably have seen a lot of change in terms of consumer expectations, how consumers walk in, what are they expecting? Was it ever transactional? I mean, there are some types of interactions with, salons that are transactional depending on who you are and what you're looking for. What has been your experience in terms of how it was maybe a decade ago, 2 decades ago versus how it is today? And we'll talk about COVID as well, but I'd love to see your perspective on how time has kind of changed people's perspectives, and clearly you have endured the test of time. So congratulations.
Thank you. That's a really interesting question. I think the fundamentals of my business are very much still in place. My business is a very human to human relationship type business. It's not very transactional. I would say, relative to most other businesses, this is probably as human to human relationship driven as you can get. Whether that's or the salon's relationship with the beauty professionals, given the amount of time that our members spend in our facilities around the salon manager, they live there. I mean, they spend as much time in the salon as they do at home. In some cases more. And our average member works in our salons for, 4 years or something like that. It's somewhere between 3 and 5 years. So those are deep human relationships, which which kind of overcome the sense of transactional kind of nature that a lot of businesses deal with. Now, one of the qualities of what I'm describing is that because we get to know the same people for so long, there's fewer customers. So we have, 3,500, but that's a lot less than, say, a retailer that has 40 locations. They might have 100,000 customers or something like that they have to deal with. But those are less intimate relationships, right? Now, when it comes to the relationship between the member, the beauty professional, and their clients, that's on a whole different level. I mean, this is even deeper on a human level. They share their most intimate, deepest, darkest, happiest fears and times and weddings and births of children. The beauty professional, the hairstylist gets to know their clients in the deepest way. I can't tell you how many times on my podcast when I'm interviewing a hairstylist about what it's like to be a hairstylist, best practices and stuff like that. the hairstylist has mentioned just how deeply they're ingrained into the lives of their clients. And in some cases, knowing that a divorce is going to happen before the husband knows.
Gotcha.
Things like this. Knowing
Wow.
that they're pregnant before the boyfriend knows that his girlfriend's pregnant. That's how deeply the hairstylists know their clients. So it's not a transactional business, and so there's benefits to that as well as challenges.
Let's talk about COVID. I mean, it's been 5 years. That's pretty amazing. A lot of businesses were affected during that time, and especially your business, which is, a people business, close interactions. I'm sure, it impacted your business. It impacted your members. Tell us about that. Like, what was that like, and how did you bounce back out of that and came back strong?
We were unfortunately unusually impacted by the COVID shutdown. California was the most strict on COVID lockdowns. We shut down in March 12th, Santa Monica shut down. March 13th, I believe everything else shut down in LA. And then I think maybe less than a week later, the state of California shut down. And we abated the rent for all of our beauty professionals, because if they're not able to work, how can they afford rent and stuff? And we just figured we'd have to go after landlords. In the end, the landlords didn't give us hardly anything. I think maybe one landlord gave us some deferral or some abatement to a small degree. The government programs, we received some benefit from it, but it only lasted, like, I think we calculated it paid for about 3 weeks of the money that was flying out the window. Okay, so I was asked to be the chair of the Professional Beauty Federation. Okay, and so we got shut down a third time. We filed the lawsuit on Friday, January 22nd, and the next business day, Monday, January 25th, opened up salons and restaurants. But it was a very interesting and horrible time for the 621,000 licensed beauty professionals in California.
Are you still, in many ways, helping the industry as a whole?
I'm still the chair of the Professional Beauty Federation, and the job of that organization, since I became part of it and post-COVID, has been to try to funnel money as much as possible from the stimulus programs that various governments have put out there into the pockets of the beauty professionals who suffered so gravely. The programs that the government put out there were vast. They had few rules, few boundaries put into place. And so, there's certain law firms who developed teams of people to learn how to get the money, how to apply for the money from the government, and entire parts of the population who had no idea that this was even available to them. ERC is a big one. Some people figured out, the ERC, there was all this money to be had to give money back to the people who suffered. And so that's what we've been working to do. And we did. And, millions of dollars that we were able to get back into the pockets of beauty professionals who suffered greatly financially.
Well, thanks for sharing that. In retrospect, you look at the end consumer who's walking into, these salons. Has there been a change in their expectations, like post-COVID? We see that in other industries, right? People, before maybe overlooked certain parts of, cleanliness or whatever, depending on the type of, business that they're walking into. They were like, hey, this is a discount store. I'm going to ignore, the stained tiles. But that's not the case. And it doesn't matter what kind of business you are. Consumers expect that the place is warm and welcoming and clean, and the expectations have skyrocketed. Have you experienced that in your business?
Oh yeah, I mean, I said that a human relationship-based business has positives and negatives, and maybe I'll speak to the negatives to some degree here, because where we found ourselves was in an environment where we're trying to satisfy the disparate perspectives and needs of, tens of thousands of people when you consider, all the clients who come in and out of our salons. So you have clients who walk in who expect the facility to behave more like a microchip clean room with everybody dressed in hazmat suits, than a functioning salon. You have people who expect that. And then you have, on the opposite side of the coin, you have people who are pissed off if somebody's wearing a mask, right? And so we had to navigate, both of those extremes and everybody in between. I mean, even through the COVID period, we had half of our people who were pissed off that they couldn't work because they believed that they could be working, safely. But there was just as many people who believed that if we're trying to open the salon, we're trying to kill them because they thought it was so risky to be in the salon. And so how do you navigate trying to take care of customers with that disparate nature of expectation?
Right.
And so that was the environment for a business like ours. I'm sure there's other good examples, but other types of businesses that are good examples of trying to navigate to the same degree that we had to. But, things that we did were, and let me say, I was on LA Mayor Garcetti's task force for reopening, quote unquote. So the city of LA paid Bain Capital Consulting a tremendous amount of money to do a report on how to reopen businesses. And they asked me to be on it. I was on there with 2 or 3 other business people. So I came up with this exhaustive list of ways that we can make the environment safe. I don't think anything ever happened with this report, but, I spent all this time, trying to, help other businesses think of ways to do it. But the things that we did, that we implemented within our facilities were things like plastic screens, right?
Sure.
I think all of us who go into stores or coffee shops have seen the plastic screens, the plastic partitions. So we spent, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000 making these plastic partitions to essentially create a barrier between, our receptionist manager who sits in the front and everybody else. And, some people were mad at us that we even had a screen because they didn't think that we needed a screen. Some people thought that the screen should be bigger and were mad at us because it wasn't bigger, right? But in the end, as I'm watching the surveillance video of actual human behavior, 99% of people just moved to the side of the screen and talked to the person so they didn't have that barrier in their way, And then, of course, exhaustive quantities of hand sanitizer. To this day, I probably have $50,000 in hand sanitizer in boxes,
Wow.
in our corporate office.
Well, there you go. Well, let's pivot a little bit, right, and talk about the future. You're very in tune with juxtaposition of design and service and the human touch, because of the business you're in. How do you see the built environment and salon design changing? What kind of metamorphosis might it go through the next 5-10 years, if even, or will that, you think, stay the same?
Lots of companies are trying to come up with ways to improve the environment with technology that's advanced to the extent that a lot of these things are possible. Ring cameras, that's a big one. So many people have Ring, doorbells on their homes and within offices. I notice in my office building, a lot of the offices have Ring cameras installed, outside of their main door to their offices, so they no longer have to actually employ a receptionist to sit inside to accommodate, guests coming in. There's digital directories that are that have proliferated out there that allow a great deal of flexibility and a better customer experience walking into a business. Digital access, which is maybe a little bit of like the Ring does, but there's also digital access that's more robust, it's more manageable, it's trackable. There's video now. These things were not, maybe they were around 15 years ago, but they weren't affordable. The internet connections that you would have in the average business probably wouldn't support, product like that. These things are now, they've proliferated everywhere. Surveillance. So in our facilities, averaging 16,000 square feet, we only have 1 to 2 employees on site, during the day. So a lot of our facilities are kind of unmonitored to some degree. So digital surveillance has now become very affordable. The cameras are very affordable. For $150, you get an amazing 4K camera, color. There's there's audio, two-way audio. You can hear what's happening. You can speak through the camera. You can pay a company that pays an employee to sit there and watch. I don't know how many they can watch, but probably 40 different feeds at a time. We've employed this in one of our locations that it's in a really cool area, but it's also a very high crime area for one of our locations. So we have, transient issues in this one location, and they love to break into the salon and just cause property damage. They don't actually steal anything, but they just screw things up and cost us money. So we have a monitoring agent where 24 hours a day, there's an actual human watching this screen. So if something bad is happening, they can get on there and they can say, hey, step away from the window. The police are on their way. That's amazing. I don't know if that was even possible a few years ago. The data around foot traffic has gotten better, foot traffic capture, different things like that. Stuff like that isn't that important for us, but it is, for retail and many other people. Things like preventative maintenance or leak detection, detecting problems faster. That stuff is out there. We're looking at that right now to detect leaks that, of course, always happen in the middle of the night. And then when the salon opens in the morning, there's a foot deep of water, right?
Oh boy.
So water flow monitoring has gotten better. And a lot of this has become necessary, as insurance costs have construction costs have skyrocketed, insurance costs, premiums have skyrocketed, and deductibles have increased a great deal just to make the insurance affordable, which means a lot of the risk of a lot of these things, like a leak, has been shifted from the insurance company onto the owner or manager of the building. And so you have to start spending money on facilities related things that can detect kind of these disasters like a leak. So there's much better products out there. And maybe the last one, I think finish material innovation has come a long way. One of the great frustrations of me running this business for 25 years is we come up with a great spec. Let's say it's a light or it's a floor or whatever. And then it gets discontinued,
right?
And you're like, oh God, now I need to find a new spec that meets all the criteria.
The pace of innovation, right?
The pace of innovation. But of course, the flooring material, to stay on that example, is more resilient, in some cases, less expensive, shorter lead times, more varied aesthetics and things like that. So I think all those are kind of new, interesting things that are in our industry.
There you go. Love it. As we wrap up, Eric, can you share anything about your vision for the future of Salon Republic, and what do we have to look forward to?
Well, you have new locations to look forward to. So we're building 6 new locations, primarily in California, Washington State, Pennsylvania State, and some other yet to be mentioned locations. And on a daily basis, we just try to deliver on that promise of offering the best possible working environment for beauty professionals so they can be happy and successful and do what they like to do while leaving the unfun stuff to us.
There you go. Can people expect to see you nationwide in the future?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've got 40 locations. I think we'll be up to 44 in a few months here. We're looking farther afield in the Northeast, but too early to mention any names.
Got it. Well, I wish you all the best. I mean, congratulations on your success, and hope to see more locations sprout throughout the country. Eric, what advice would you give folks in our audience who are listening and maybe they realize that the impact of the physical built environment isn't as well known in the businesses that they're part of? How would they articulate, the words that they heard today from the founder and CEO of a company whose product is the built environment?
I think, of course, every business is going to have different trade-offs, different interests, different priorities. But something that I see over and over again, and so I'll just make this my recommendation, is to hire a professional to do certain things. In most cases, it's an interior designer. Hire a really good interior designer. Don't try to design things yourself. Like if you don't think a physical environment matters very much, it's unlikely that you're going to justify to yourself taking on the expense of an interior design professional. But the reality is people can tell. The built environment matters a lot. And two, how it looks, I think, is very important. So just bite the bullet, pay for somebody, who can match the floor finish to the wall paint color. It's not that big of a deal. You're going to do yourself a huge service versus ending up with something that looks like a disaster at the end.
Well, there you go. Well, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time and having this conversation. Absolutely fascinating. And thank you for sharing all the stories. I'm sure people will appreciate your experience over the past 25 years, especially the past 5 years.
Thanks for having me, Sid.
Eric, thank you so much. And for all those in our audience, thank you for joining us. And we'll see you on the next episode of Elevating Brick and Mortar. That was Eric Taylor, founder and CEO of Salon Republic. We talk a lot on this show about the importance of the physical built environment on delivering a business's brand promise. In Salon Republic's case, the built environment is the product, and they ensure that beauty professionals around the country can foster their own businesses and customer base. What is really interesting is how Eric shares the human elements of the business, though. Yes, it's about the talent, but it's also about relationships, trust, and customer loyalty. Businesses like Salon Republic create an environment where members can focus on their craft, and then they take care of the rest. Clearly, they're doing something right, with some of their members supporting them for over 25 years. With that, I'm your host, Sid Shetty, and I'll see you on the next episode of Elevating Brick and Mortar.
Operations and facilities teams across industries rely on ServiceChannel to ensure that their locations provide the best possible guest experience. Keep customers coming back by lowering downtime and raising your brand standards. Visit ServiceChannel.com to learn more.